The story of Ottoman Jerusalem begins with a clash of empires. In the early 16th century, the city was under the control of the Mamluk Sultanate, a power that had dominated Egypt and Syria for centuries. But a new force was rising from the north, the Ottoman Empire, led by the formidable Sultan Selim I. Selim, known as the Grim for his unyielding ambition, was determined to expand his domain. He saw the Mamluk lands not just as territory to be conquered, but as the heartlands of Islam, home to the holy cities. His campaign was swift and decisive, a testament to the might of the Ottoman military machine. In 1516, at the Battle of Marj Dabik, the Mamluks were utterly defeated, their fate sealed. With the main Mamluk army shattered, the path to Jerusalem lay open. In the winter of 1517, the Ottoman forces marched into the Holy City. There was no great battle, no destructive siege. The city's leaders, understanding the shift in power, wisely chose to submit to the new rulers. For the people of Jerusalem, this was another chapter in a long history of changing masters. Yet, the arrival of the Ottomans would usher in an era of remarkable stability. Sultan Selim I, a devout Sunni Muslim, made a pilgrimage to the city, praying at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and asserting his new role as the protector of Islam's third holiest site. This act set the tone for the next 4 centuries of Ottoman administration. The incorporation of Jerusalem into the vast Ottoman Empire was seamless. The city was not just another provincial town. It held a unique spiritual significance that the sultans deeply respected. It was designated as part of the Vilayet of Damascus, or province of Damascus, but its administration often reflected its special status. The Ottomans were pragmatic rulers. They understood that to govern this diverse city effectively, they needed to respect its existing structures and its complex tapestry of faiths. Their primary goals were clear: to maintain order, ensure the flow of taxes, and safeguard the holy places for pilgrims of all 3 Abrahamic faiths who journeyed there from across the world. This initial period under Selim I and his successor, Sulayman the Magnificent, was a golden age for Ottoman Jerusalem. The new rulers brought with them a sense of purpose and a vision for the city. They were not merely conquerors, they were builders and administrators. They saw Jerusalem as a jewel in their imperial crown and were prepared to invest heavily in its restoration and security. This commitment would transform the city's physical landscape and secure its place as a center of pilgrimage and peaceful coexistence for generations to come, laying the groundwork for a long and complex relationship that would define Jerusalem for 400 years. To rule a city as complex as Jerusalem, the Ottomans developed a sophisticated system of governance. At the top was the provincial governor, or pasha, appointed directly by the Sultan in Istanbul. This governor was the ultimate authority, responsible for maintaining law and order, collecting taxes, and carrying out the decrees of the central government. However, the pasha did not rule alone. He was assisted by an administrative council, known as a diwan. This council was a fascinating reflection of the city's diversity. It included not only Ottoman officials and military commanders, but also, crucially, local Muslim scholars and the leaders of the various Christian and Jewish communities. This inclusive approach was a hallmark of Ottoman pragmatism. The sultans understood that local knowledge was essential for effective rule. By including religious leaders in the council, they ensured that the concerns and needs of each community were heard. This system allowed for a degree of local autonomy and helped to diffuse tensions before they could escalate into serious conflict. Jerusalem, due to its immense religious importance, was granted a special status, often referred to as a sanjak or district. This meant it was governed with a lighter touch than other parts of the empire, with a keen focus on maintaining the delicate balance between its different religious groups. The day-to-day running of the city was a collaborative effort. While the Ottomans held ultimate power, they relied on local families and community leaders to manage their own affairs. This created a complex web of relationships, where influence was negotiated and power was shared. The system was designed to ensure stability above all else. Justice was administered through a hierarchy of courts. Islamic law, or Sharia, was the law of the land, but the religious communities had their own courts to deal with internal matters like marriage, divorce, and inheritance, provided they did not conflict with the interests of the state. This structure of governance, with a central authority balanced by local participation, proved remarkably resilient. It allowed Jerusalem to function as a coherent entity despite its deep internal divisions. The governor acted as the central pillar, representing the Sultan's power, while the local councils and community leaders formed the foundations, ensuring the city's life could continue with a sense of order and predictability. It was a system that respected tradition while asserting imperial control, a delicate balancing act that the Ottomans managed to maintain for centuries, ensuring Jerusalem remained a city of relative peace under their long shadow. At the heart of the Ottoman Empire's social structure was the ingenious millet system. This was the framework that allowed the empire's diverse religious and ethnic groups to coexist. A millet was essentially a recognized religious community, granted a considerable degree of autonomy to manage its own affairs. In Jerusalem, this system was particularly important. The main millets were the Orthodox Christians, the Armenians, the Jews, and of course the ruling Muslim community. Each millet was led by its own religious figure, a patriarch for the Christians, a chief rabbi for the Jews, who was responsible for his community's spiritual and civil welfare. Under this system, each community was free to use its own language, practice its own religion, and run its own schools and charitable institutions. They had their own courts to settle disputes between their members, according to their own religious laws. This legal pluralism was a cornerstone of Ottoman rule. As long as the communities paid their taxes and remained loyal to the Sultan, the central government rarely interfered in their internal matters. For non-Muslims, this meant paying a special poll tax known as the jizya, which granted them the status of dhimmi, or protected peoples, and exempted them from military service. This framework fostered a unique kind of coexistence. It wasn't always perfect, and tensions did arise, particularly over shared holy sites like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. However, the millet system provided a formal structure for managing these disputes. The Ottomans saw themselves as arbiters issuing decrees or firmans to regulate everything from the times of worship to the rights to repair a specific chapel. Their main objective was not to favor one group over another, but to maintain the status quo and prevent any single community from gaining an advantage that might upset the delicate balance. Life in Ottoman Jerusalem was therefore defined by both separation and interaction. In their respective quarters, the Muslim, Christian, Armenian, and Jewish quarters that we can still walk through today. The millets lived according to their own customs. Yet, in the bustling markets and shared public spaces, people of all faiths mingled, traded, and coexisted. The millet system was not a modern model of equality, as the Muslim community held a privileged position. Nevertheless, for its time, it was a remarkably tolerant and practical solution to governing a multi-religious society, allowing Jerusalem's unique spiritual mosaic to endure and flourish under 4 centuries of Ottoman stewardship. The long era of Ottoman rule came to a dramatic end with the turmoil of the First World War. The Ottoman Empire, having sided with the Central Powers, found itself fighting a losing battle against the Allied forces, including the British. In December 1917, after a hard-fought campaign, British troops under General Allenby entered Jerusalem. For the first time in exactly 400 years, the city was no longer under Ottoman control. The familiar crescent flag was lowered, and the British mandate was established, heralding a new and profoundly different chapter in Jerusalem's history, one that would bring with it new conflicts and aspirations. The end of Ottoman rule brought significant changes. The millet system, while its social divisions persisted, was officially replaced by a new legal framework under the British. European influence, which had been growing for decades through consulates, missionaries, and pilgrims, now became dominant. The old ways of governance, based on tradition and negotiation between community leaders and a distant sultan, gave way to a modern colonial administration. This shift fundamentally altered the political dynamics of the city and the wider region, setting the stage for the conflicts that would define the 20th century. Yet, to walk through Jerusalem today is to walk through a city shaped profoundly by the Ottomans. Their most visible legacy is etched in stone. The magnificent walls that encircle the old city were rebuilt by Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in the 1530s. These formidable fortifications, with their grand gates like the Damascus Gate and Jaffa Gate, still define the city's historic heart. The Ottomans also invested heavily in the city's infrastructure, restoring aqueducts to improve the water supply and renovating the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque, ensuring their splendor was maintained. Their architectural signature is everywhere, in the public fountains, markets, and buildings that line the ancient streets. Beyond the physical structures, the Ottomans left a deeper, more intangible legacy. Their 400-year rule embedded a particular character in the city, a tradition of coexistence, however fragile, managed through negotiation and a respect for shared holy spaces. The administrative and religious divisions they formalized, including the familiar quarters of the Old City, continue to shape social and political life. Though their empire has long since vanished, the Ottomans' long stewardship provided a period of stability that allowed Jerusalem's multi-layered identity to be preserved, leaving an indelible mark on the soul and the skyline of the Holy.
Subscribe for more updates.